also important that you respond verbally. Sometimes it's difficult to interpret. All right, so for the record, if you please state your name, spelling your last.
Paul Hill, Hill.
Thank you. You may inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. It's still morning, so I can say good morning.
Morning.
Where are you employed?
Upper Arlington Fire Department,
And how long have you been employed there?
7 years and 2 months.
And what is your title?
Firefighter, paramedic.
What do those duties include of a firefighter and paramedic?
To do any tasks needed for the department, whether it comes to fire or medical, depending on which truck I'm on for the day.
Can you just give us a few examples?
From a medic standpoint, we take all emergency calls, any 911 calls.
Okay. And what shift do you currently work?
I am on 2 unit, work 24 hours on, 48 hours off.
What are your current, do you have days off, or does it just alternate depending on, I'm sorry, do you have specific days off, or does it just alternate depending on if you've worked the prior 24?
I have specific days off, so work 1 on, 2 off, and then sometimes we do work overtime and trades and things like that.
Okay. So back in December of 2020, were you working as a firefighter paramedic back then?
Yes, I was working as paramedic in charge on the ambulance.
Okay. So back in December of 2020, what station were you assigned to?
Station 72, which is on Reed Road.
All right. And can you tell us just generally kind of what the area is that provides service to, or what the boundaries are?
Yes, Henderson Road is our north boundary. Riverside Drive is our west boundary. Kenny Road is our east boundary, and Zollinger Road is our south.
Okay. Now, is Oberlin Drive considered part of your boundaries?
No, it's on the east side of Kenny Road, so it is not ours.
Okay. Do you sometimes end up on runs that are outside of what Station 72 would typically cover?
Frequently.
Okay. And what happens so to alert you that you are being dispatched to a run that's outside of your boundaries?
So if we get a mutual aid call, the city, specifically say City of Columbus or whichever department, they would call NREC, which is located in Dublin, by phone, and ask if our vehicles are available for mutual aid. Then if we are, they would dispatch us the same way they typically would do. We would get a pre-alert announcement in the fire station, and then we would be dispatched on the call.
And can you explain for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury just a little bit who don't probably know how the system works, kind of like how that dispatch system does work, and a little bit more about how you get notified?
So when our dispatcher receives the phone call, they will put out the pre-alert. It's very general. It's just basically letting us know that a call is coming in. It could say ill person, injured person, allergic reaction. It's just a general subject. From there, we start moving to the trucks, and then when we get into our trucks, typically by the time we get there, we have detailed notes of what we're going on, what's going on in the scene, any patient information they may have, any known history they may have, and if any medical personnel are on scene or PD or anything else.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to back up just a little bit. Were you working your regular shift on the late night of December 21st, early morning hours of December 22nd, 2020?
I was. My shift started at 7:30 on December 21st, and I was set to get off December 22nd at 7:30 in the morning.
So you mentioned earlier that you were the paramedic in charge that day.
Correct.
For Station 72. What does the paramedic in charge do?
It would be my responsibility to document anything that goes on, and during patient care, It's my responsibility to determine how care is done.
Are you often responsible for writing reports as well?
That's expected when medic in charge.
Okay. All right. Now, you were talking a little bit about receiving information about a run. Is there a difference between the amount of information or the type of information that you receive when it comes directly from Upper Arlington versus when it comes from one of those mutual aid dispatches from another jurisdiction?
Yeah, so when it comes from an Upper Arlington run, we typically get names, phone numbers, age. If the person has a key code to get in the garage or something like that, all that information will be included. And if we have history with that patient, we may get some more information from previous runs. When it comes from Columbus, it's usually pretty vague. It'll just kind of give us a general sense of what we're going on, but not much more than that.
Okay. And on this particular date that we're talking about, were you dispatched on a run at around 2 a.m. in the morning?
Yeah, our dispatch received the call at 1:59 a.m. and we were dispatched at 1:59 a.m.
And did that call come from whom?
Came from Columbus to NREC, who then dispatched us.
Okay. All right, and what information did you receive?
We were told that there was a shooting involving an officer and that the scene was clear to enter. We did not know if the officer shot or was shot.
Okay, so you just knew that there was an officer involved shooting, but you didn't know which, I guess, party was doing the shooting. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And you said that you received information that the scene was clear?
Yes.
Can you explain to us what the significance of that information is, why you need that information?
It's in our SOPs or standard operating procedures that the fire department does not enter any scene if it's any type of act of violence until PD tells us it is safe to enter.
And this may seem obvious, but why is that?
Just for our safety.
Okay. So it's part of your procedure that you can't enter a scene until it's been declared safe by police.
Correct.
Now, that call that you received, or the dispatch that went out to you at 1:59, do you recall the address that you were sent to?
I don't remember the exact address. I just remember Oberlin Drive. From the in-charge standpoint, really don't pay attention to the address.
Does 1054 sound about right? 1054 Oberlin?
I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, you indicated that the call came in around 1:59, correct?
Correct.
Do you know approximately how long it took you to get to the scene?
About in between 2 and 3 minutes.
All right. Once you got to that scene, were you allowed to go straight in?
Yes.
And then at that point, what did you do?
As we pulled up on scene, do you want me to explain
Yes,
just
please.
the whole process? Okay. As we arrived on scene, there were multiple cop cars as we pulled in, got to the driveway, got out of the truck, went towards the patient immediately, just noticed CPR was being done, which allowed me to know that we were going to be working an arrest, cardiac arrest. From there, I tried to get information from PD. I was unable to get all the information. The cops that were on scene said they just arrived and didn't know all the details. The police officer who was doing compressions, I asked him how long he had been doing compressions. He said 2 minutes. And according to AHA, American Heart Association, you want to change out providers every 2 minutes so that way you get good compressions. People get tired as they go along. I asked him to switch out with another officer on scene. Then I checked for a pulse, a carotid pulse. There was no pulse. His eyes were dilated. From there, my partner brought our autopulse and cot. We got everything ready. Autopulse is a machine that does manual compressions for us, so we don't have to do them. It opens up more hands to be able to work. I had the officers stop compressions to take the handcuffs off, so that way we could appropriately put him on the device. We moved him from there into our truck, and then we transported him to Riverside. En route, we attempted an IO, intraosseous, which is putting a needle in the leg, which allows us to give medications. It was unsuccessful. We got a IV in his arm, but by the time we got to the hospital, by the time that was successful, we were going into the hospital, so we did not administer any medications. We did not have a route to do so. As we arrived at the hospital, I got out of the truck and went in first to go into the room where he would be going, so that way I could give a report to everybody in the room. As I was done giving a report, my partner and Columbus medics were bringing him in, and we transferred care.
Okay.
Oh, and then also Columbus medics showed up on scene as we were putting him on the auto pulse, so they assisted in that.
Okay. Do you ultimately know what happened to that individual?
He was shot.
And as far as his injury or his status, do you ultimately know what happened to him?
He deceased.
All right. So I want to back up just a little bit. We've been talking about he. I'm assuming that this was a male patient, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. And do you recall, with a little more detail, where he was located when you approached him, where you found him?
Yeah, he was located in the driveway, just outside of the garage.
All right. And I believe you indicated he had a gunshot wound or more than one?
Yes. From initial assessment, it looked like he was potentially shot in the right leg. There was a large amount of blood there, and then also in the chest and abdomen area, there was also a large pooling of blood.
All right. Did he have any vital signs while you were there?
He had no carotid pulse when I checked, and we hooked him to our heart monitor, which showed asystole.
Do you recall any items nearby where he was located on the ground?
I recall a cell phone near him, and as well as keys.
And I think you mentioned this briefly. Were there other emergency vehicles on the scene at the time that you arrived or shortly after you arrived?
Shortly after, Medic 19 arrived.
Would Medic 19 be Columbus or?
Yes, sorry, Columbus Medic 19.
Okay. One moment.
Yes, you may.
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Amler. Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor.
May I proceed?
You may.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Hill.
Morning.
My name is Caitlin Stevens, and I, along with my partner, Mr. Collins, represent Mr. Coy in this action. If at any time I go too fast or you don't understand my question, please just ask me to rephrase.
Okay.
Have you testified in court before, sir?
First time.
I want to talk about your duty as a paramedic, and congrats on your first time testifying in court. As a paramedic, you're trained to respond to gunshot wounds, correct?
Correct.
And sir, in this particular case, you weren't interviewed until 8 days after the fact by BCI agents, right?
I don't know the amount of time, but it was after.
It was after the incident. It was not on December 22nd, 2020, right?
Correct.
And you were in charge, you said, you were the paramedic in charge of paramedic 72, correct?
Correct.
Your responsibilities as that paramedic in charge include writing a report, right?
Correct.
And it obviously includes responding to scenes
Correct.
and treating gunshot wounds, right?
Correct.
I want to talk to you about the system that you spoke with Ms. Amlin about with respect to Upper Arlington communicating with you, going through that end track to getting dispatched. You would agree with me that you're just provided limited information, right?
Correct.
And so that report is really you taking down those details that you compile as paramedic in charge, correct?
Correct.
Now, when you got to the scene, you stated that there was an officer who was doing chest compressions, correct?
Correct.
And he advised that he had been doing chest compressions for 2 minutes, right?
Correct.
And so you advised him to switch with somebody for chest compression purposes, correct?
Yes.
And you said you remember a set of keys near the victim's head, correct?
Yes.
You've gone to other shooting scenes and responded to other shooting scenes before, right?
Correct.
And so it's not uncommon where a person involved is actually handcuffed even though they're a victim, right?
Correct.
You mentioned part of your responsibilities in this case was writing a report.
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Sir, I am approaching you with what has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit 2. Let the record reflect that I have handed the witness what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Defendant's Exhibit 2.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay, Mr. Collins was doing alphabets, just so that there's no, less confusion.
This will be admitted, not the alphabet won't. I'll switch to number.
Okay, all right. So Defense Exhibit 2.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Sir, you had an opportunity to review that document, correct?
Yes.
That is the report that you authored as part of your responsibilities in responding to a scene on December 22nd, 2024, right?
Yes.
And that is a fair and accurate copy of the full report that you authored back on December 22nd, 2020?
Yes.
And you do this as a part of every time you are a medic in charge, correct?
Yes.
So it's part of your regularly conducted business activities that you have to do, that you're required to do as a paramedic in charge, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, may I have permission to publish this report to the jury?
Any objection?
No, John.
You may.
I want to review some details in this report, sir. It talks about the times that you were dispatched. You would agree with me, right?
Yes.
And it says you were dispatched, or you received the call at 1:59, right?
Yes.
And going down that line, you were dispatched also at 1:59, correct?
Yes.
And you were en route at 2:02, correct?
Correct.
You were at the scene at 2:05, correct?
Yes.
And you were told at that time the scene had been cleared and it was safe for you to enter, correct?
Correct.
So by 2:06 a.m., you were at the patient, right?
Correct.
You noted additional details on this report, correct? Like where you were responding, that address?
That's put in by dispatch, yes.
Okay, so that part was put in by dispatch. It was also then noted on your report that the race of the victim was white, correct?
Correct.
Fair to say that you were working on this patient at 1 o'clock in the morning? 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yes, two.
And it was very dark when you were working on this patient, correct?
It was.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
You may.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hill. I have no further questions at this time.
Thank you. Redirect.
Nothing, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens. All right, Mr. Hill, you can step down. Okay. All right, counsel, please approach off the record. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and break for lunch at this time. If I could get you back in the jury room before 1 a.m., we'll get started 1 a.m. That's the same thing. They did the same thing yesterday, 1 p.m. We can get you back into the jury room before 1 p.m. Again, remember the admonitions that I've given you with respect to discussing this case among yourselves or with anyone else. Please enjoy your lunch. See you back around 1. All rise for the jury.